Welcome to Break the Cycle with Bethany Dotson, the podcast for high-achieving professional women who struggle with codependency, attracting emotionally unavailable partners, and who repeat dysfunctional patterns in love. I'm your host, Bethany Dotson, and if you want to learn more about how to break your cycle in love, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and be the first to know when a new episode drops. I'll see you inside. Hello, everybody. We're almost done with 2023. I don't understand how that's happening so fast. I want to speak to you today about why you may have done years of talk therapy and you still wind up in toxic relationships. And this was my personal journey, and this has been the case for a lot of the clients that we have worked with here inside Break the Cycle. And I would say 80% of the women that we talk to every week on breakthrough calls. So if you have done a lot of talk therapy and your relationship patterns tend to get worse, meaning you're attracting the same type of individual again and again, even in spite of many years of working on yourself, or you've just given up and you've avoided your love life and avoided intimate relationships for many years in spite of doing a lot of work on yourself, this is for you. So the number one reason, and this may ruffle your tail feathers, that you are not seeing any positive changes or lasting changes in your romantic relationships is because you haven't truly made the decision to heal your toxic patterns. Now, I want to preface that by saying there is probably a part of you in there that realizes you're the common denominator. There's probably a part of you that got into therapy or sought help because you knew you needed help. And I really want to acknowledge those things. That's great. But what I'm talking about specifically is that you may have wound up in therapy due to a bout of anxiety or depression, or a bad relationship ending, or being in a marriage and wanting it to work out. So you were going because of an acute problem, or the problem was really acute at that moment in your life, and that the severity of the pain and the discomfort that you were feeling in those moments was enough to drive you to seek help to make that pain go away. So this is an inherent behavioral pattern that we all have as humans. I want to seek pleasure and avoid pain. The issue, though, that I often see is that you get into therapy to fix that acute, or what you may perceive at the time as an isolated problem, but you may not realize that it's really a chronic problem, or you haven't truly made the decision to heal your toxic emotional patterns. So this is the number one reason that I see you haven't yet truly made the decision to heal your toxic emotional patterns. So the second reason, and this ties into the first, is that you may be spending a lot of time, if you're currently in therapy, venting or talking a lot about the past and making linkages to your past experiences in childhood to now your choices that you're making in your love life. And this is not necessarily bad. You may also be revisiting specific experiences that you had with your ex, or a dating situation, and rehashing that stuff and trying to get clarity and just like getting it off your chest and venting about it. This is not a bad thing, because I was in a group coaching call earlier this week, and we talked about the benefit of having a good cry. You always feel better afterwards. Or if you get the stomach flu and you need to throw up, you don't really want to throw up, but you often feel a lot better after you throw up. So it's the same thing when you go into a session with a talk therapist or whoever you're working with, maybe even a coach even, and they let you run away with your story and you keep venting and venting about it. And in the short term, you feel good and it's okay, I feel good. And then a few days later, life continues to happen for you. You continue to make the same subconscious toxic choices in your relationships, whether that's at work, whether that's with family or friends. And the tension starts to build up again. And then you go into your therapist's office and then you vent about what happened. And then, okay, I feel good. And so what I found is that a lot of people will go many years like this because it works for a while. They feel better. They feel supported. And this was my experience. And I did this for 12 years. And my choices in romantic partners got worse and worse as the years rolled on. So it goes back to the first reason. You may not realize that it's a chronic problem. When you're going because you're trying to treat an acute problem. And that's tied into, you may think the problem is your ex or your toxic job environment or the city that you live in or the lack of quality men at 50 and over. And you might go into your therapy with those types of beliefs, or that you're inherently unworthy, and then spend a lot of time just circling and rehashing that stuff. And while that feels good to be validated and to be heard and to be seen, especially if you don't feel those things on a normal daily basis in your own life, you can get like comfortable there. And the other thing that seems to make venting really rewarding is that when we're venting about an ex or an ex-spouse or the toxic job environment that we're in and our toxic boss and this coworker that does this one thing, it can feel really good to feel right and feel vindicated in your position and to feel like they're the wrong people and I'm right. And how is this happening to me? And sometimes what happens in a therapy setting is that we get rewarded for being the victim, and we get sympathy and we get encouragement and we get validation. And I'm not saying that these things are all wrong, but there comes a point when you feel like you're being rewarded, or it's okay to keep talking about that. And you have to ask yourself the question, am I really getting anywhere? Am I actually seeing long-term changes in my relationship patterns? Am I seeing long-term changes in my emotional and my mental health? Or do I feel like I keep having to go back and reanalyze a past situation that happened in order to feel better? The third reason why you may have done a lot of talk therapy and you're not seeing changes in your love life, and or they may be getting worse, is a lack of trauma awareness. I don't know what the statistics are as of today, but a couple of years ago, it was mentioned that up to 80% of clinicians, meaning cognitive behavioral therapists, weren't trauma informed, meaning they didn't have knowledge of what complex trauma was. They didn't really know how to treat it, talking about it. They didn't have other methods or modes of working with trauma other than just talking and trying to change your patterns by changing the way that you think. And that's great. That works for a lot of people. And that's one way. But what we know, especially with people who have relational trauma, and this means and looks like getting into repetitive dysfunctional relationships, specifically romantic relationships, where it's like the same pattern, different face, where it's the same emotional unavailability, the same emotional immaturity, selfishness, narcissistic traits. It's just a different person. And as the years go on, it gets worse. This is relational trauma. What we know with trauma is that it does have a thought pattern, right? But mostly it has a body-based pattern, meaning you store these experiences and these unconscious, memorized emotional reactions to triggers in relationships in here. And let me give you an example. So let's say if you go on a date with somebody and you can sense immediately that there are red flags. While somebody who might not have relational trauma will be able to shut that down right then and there on that date and realize, hey, this is not the person for me, and not make up a story like I'm never going to meet anybody and this person is just a complete, and not go so severe in one direction, like I'm never going to meet anybody, this person's just an asshole, but just objectively and in the middle way, if you will, realize, yeah, this is not the right person for me. Okay, this is just part of the journey. Somebody with relational trauma may sense that there are red flags, but because of their past conditioning, because maybe earlier in life, they had to grow up with a lot of red flags in a childhood environment, and they had to learn how to ignore that in order to get their needs met. That's a memorized pattern that is in here as well. It's not just up here in your mind, because I can't tell you how many hundreds and hundreds of people that we've talked to that knew there were red flags very early with an ex, but they chose to ignore them. And that choosing to ignore a red flag is often familiar for her. Ignoring bad behavior in order to get her needs met was a familiar pattern she developed earlier somewhere in her life, either in childhood or in adult life, to get through and survive a situation. So if you've been doing a lot of talk therapy and your relationships get worse, or you're just avoiding your love life completely, relational trauma is usually at the heart of all of that. And if you're talking about your past, what we know is that the more you talk about your past and you revisit it in your mind's eye and you just continue to tell that same old story, you continue to experience the same emotions and the same nervous system response to that event like it was happening in the present moment. And the more you do that, the more you train your body in fear and in contraction, in a state of emotional contraction. And unfortunately, a lot of people live like that on a day-to-day life, and that feels normal for them. If you're living, especially if you just got out of a toxic relationship and you're really on edge and you can't sleep and your mind's racing and you're constantly ruminating, or maybe it's been a long time since your past relationship, but you still feel empty on the inside. You don't really feel like you have a lot of, like, you just feel really stuck in a rut. You feel emotionally numb a lot. These things, these situations are trauma responses. And you have to use an evidence-based protocol for repatterning how you're thinking and how you're feeling. And I call this your emotional home. And break this, like, repatterning how you feel about yourself, how you feel about men, potential partners in your area, how you feel about your future. The number one reason why you have not received the relationship and the type of connection that you really want is because on some level deep down, you don't believe that you deserve it. You might say that with your words, but unconsciously and on a subconscious level, you're not truly believing that's true. And so it can be especially easy when you're 40, 50, or 60 and you have a long list of heartbreak and bad experiences in your past to continue believing that's true. But if you do, that is going to give you the same, more of the same. So you have to use a deeper method to bypass your analytical mind, to get back into your subconscious programming, and to be more aware of how you're feeling on a day-to-day basis and being willing to shift that consistently. And here in Break the Cycle, we use somatic therapy, which is evidence-based, specifically for healing relational trauma and rewiring how you think and rewiring how you feel, and doing this on a daily basis. Most people, like, it's the same thing. If you want to go to the gym and get in shape, you have to be consistent. One of the downsides with going to talk therapy is that you may get a lot of insight and valuable information from that 145-minute session every week, but then there's 6 days between sessions. And what are you doing? You may be very probably relapsing to your old pattern behavior. So that's the third reason. The fourth reason that you may have done a lot of therapy and you're not seeing great results in your love life is that there's a lack of a succinct plan and a lack of accountability on helping you reach your goals. Everybody that we work with here has become comfortable with toxic relationships on a certain level. The excitement, the spark, the highs and the lows, the drama, the chaos, all of that equates to, on a subconscious level, love. That's what they have been programmed to view love as. And they continue to get in these dysfunctional relationships that make them feel more and more like crap as the years go on, and more distrustful, more shut down. And it just exacerbates their trust in themselves, their trust in other people, and their belief that they can actually have a great relationship. In order to overcome that, especially if that's been your pattern for 40 years, most of the women that we work with here are over the age of 40, or they're in their late 30s, and they've never had a great relationship. All of their relationships are dysfunctional in some form or fashion. And this doesn't just limit to their romantic choices. Job environments often friendships, family. And it's not to say that these things are your fault, but when we're specifically talking about your romantic relationships and even maybe job environments that you choose, the common denominator is you. And if you want to truly overcome a decades-long pattern, it is going to take a high level, number one, of commitment. Going back to reason number one why you're still stuck, you have to make the decision that you really want to do this. And you need to follow a succinct plan every day to recondition your brain and your body out of that trauma response, out of those crappy beliefs and thoughts that you have about yourself, and shift your emotional home. And this needs to be done every day. Why does it need to be done every day? Because consistency and repetition is how you get really good at anything. And it's the same thing with rewiring your brain and how you feel every day. You have to be consistent. If you've been doing a lot of therapy and not getting anywhere, there's a high likelihood that you're not actually applying what you're doing or the insights that you're getting, or you don't know how to apply it, or you have a lack of accountability. And inside Break the Cycle, we not only give our clients an evidence-based strategy, a protocol, if you will, every day to follow. So there's the system, there's the succinct plan to get from point A to point B, but accountability, because we're all humans. What do we know about January? In the month of January, everybody's making New Year's resolutions. And by the time February rolls around, 80% of those people or more have fallen back into their old behavior, because human beings like to seek pleasure and avoid pain. And whenever we are changing our patterns and creating new habits and creating new behaviors, it is uncomfortable in the beginning. And if it's left up to you, it is really easy just to slide. You have a bad day or a bad week, and it's really easy to let yourself slide. We were talking about this in our coaching call last night. Your commitment to yourself. One of the main reasons why you don't have the types of relationships that you want, you're not getting your outcomes there, isn't because the people that you're choosing aren't committed to you. It's because you're not committed to you. And there's a whole host of beliefs and past experiences that have led you to believing that on a conscious or unconscious level. In order to overcome that, especially if you're over the age of 35, you need a very succinct plan. It needs to be trauma informed. You need to be accountable, held accountable, so that you don't, if not that you don't, because a lot of people still relapse a little bit, but if you relapse, getting back up quicker and not like giving up on yourself. I get a lot of people that have gone years without a date, 5 years or more, and they haven't been on a date in that many years. And part of that problem is they don't believe that they're worthy of having a great relationship deep down. They're scared of making the wrong choice. And they tend to give up the commitment to themselves and break promises with themselves in order to make other people happy, like their job, like their children, like their friends or family. Just to quickly recap, the top 4 reasons why you have maybe done years of therapy and tons of analysis on yourself and you are still winding up in dysfunctional relationships. Number 1, you haven't truly made the decision to heal your toxic emotional patterns. You haven't truly yet made the decision to be uncomfortable and drop the ways that you keep yourself safe in life by being a perfectionist, by being an overachiever, by being a workaholic. You haven't yet decided that you are going to drop all of your armor and be really vulnerable and uncomfortable in that journey. The second thing that's holding you back is that you may be more committed to venting and being right and blaming your circumstances on external things like the city you live in. I just have a lack of time. Men my age have a lot of baggage, etc. My childhood set me up for this. So it's going to be super hard for me to break this pattern. You can fall back on that venting strategy. And that feels good. But it's like eating junk food. It feels good in the moment, but you're going to regret it later. And I've seen this thousands of times in people that I've spoken with over the years where they've done a lot of therapy and they're still stuck. So if that's you, pay attention. Have you truly made the decision that you are really ready to face your fears? If you are getting people that are commitment phobic, that are emotionally unavailable, that have narcissistic traits, it is that there's a high likelihood that you are making choices in your life and in your dating life from a place of fear and a belief system of I don't deserve it, and past trauma that you haven't fully resolved yet. The third reason you're not going to somebody who's trauma informed or who may lack awareness in complex or relational trauma and not have any other methods other than just the dialogue process on how to help you feel better. You may feel better in the moment after you talk about it, but you're not really creating any lasting change. And this has been shown and proven in research that when you reanalyze the past and look at it from the rearview mirror, you're just firing the same brain wiring that is associated with your past trauma. You're not creating new brain wiring associated with a new goal or outcome. And then finally, the final reason that you're still stuck after lots and lots of therapy is that you have a lack of a succinct plan, meaning you're just like talking and having a loose conversation and you don't have any accountability. Like if you're watching this, you're probably really smart and deep down what you need to be doing, but you're not doing it. And this is because we human beings like the comfort zone. We are evolved from caveman days where we had to seek shelter and safety from a dinosaur. So a lot of that brain patterning, that behavioral conditioning is still with us today as we've evolved over the centuries. And our tendency is to seek pleasure and avoid pain. But if you continue, and there's times to seek pleasure and avoid pain for sure. If you have the flu, you shouldn't be going to the gym and doing a leg day or working out really hard, right? You should be seeking pleasure and resting. But there comes a time where that pattern of seeking pleasure and staying in the comfort zone destroys your life. And if you stayed too long in an unhealthy marriage, you probably had really good intentions, or an unhealthy toxic relationship. You probably had really good intentions. You wanted it to work. You wanted things to work out. But in that container of a relationship, you're essentially seeking pleasure and avoiding the reality, avoiding the truth. And the longer you do that, the more destructive it creates, the more destruction it creates in your life, the less you trust yourself, the less you trust other people, and the more you believe that it's not possible for you. So if you realize that's a silly way to live, that's not a fun way to live, and you're tired of living like that, and you're actually ready to go for it, and you're ready, we work with a lot of people who are really successful in their careers. They have a great career. On paper, they look like they're like a class A catch, but deep down underneath, they feel terrible about themselves. So if you realize, yeah, I graduated law school. Yeah, I graduated med school. Yeah, I graduated, I got my MBA. I did all this stuff. I worked for this great company. I've climbed the ranks. If I can do that, why can't I take those same traits and apply them to my love life? And if you know that you need more help with that, if you know you need a succinct plan, if you know you need accountability, if you know that you're the problem or part of the problem in your co-creation of romantic relationships, and you're ready to overcome that once and for all, and you don't want to keep talking about it, you want to take action and move forward, then this is what we specialize in. This is what we do. If you're a high achieving woman, if you're probably really hard on yourself, if you're a perfectionist, if you get into relationships where the men are underachieving and you got to fix them in order to feel in control or feel like you're loved in that moment, buy yourself some false security that he's not going to leave you because he really needs you, then this is your trauma at play. And if you're ready to overcome that and you're ready to write a new relationship template and with yourself first and foremost, because it all starts with you, and then learn how to attract a great partner, learn how to date in a way where you feel vulnerable, you feel open, you're enjoying it, it's an empowering experience, then I invite you to book a free breakthrough call. Go to BethanyDotson.com/talk, and we'll have a very honest conversation about changing your life. This call is for people who are single or divorced or in the process of divorce, meaning you've already filed, you've moved out, Here's the deal. You are 1000% done with your ex and you're not hoping to go back, and you're not dating anybody that was bad for you, but you really hope is going to work out. You're single and you're in a place where you like, okay, I'm ready to dive deep on me. You need to be stable in other areas of your life. Why is this? When we talk about healing relational trauma and these deeper emotional patterns, it's best done when other areas of your life are secure, successful, and stable, and not major sources of stress, because this is going to pull you off the path of healing. It's not that life doesn't continue to happen when you're healing, but if you are in job transition right now, if you don't know where you're going to live next week, it would probably behoove you to get some stability in those areas first before booking a call. And then finally, you've already done therapy. You've already taken the initiative. You've already taken those steps to help yourself, which is what we look for, right? Action and that decisiveness is what creates success in a lot of people, but you're not getting the results that you want. So if that sounds like you and you are tired of secretly feeling like something's wrong with you and you want to overcome this pattern once and for all, go to BethanyDotson.com/talk, and we will have a very honest conversation to see if we can help you break your cycle. Have a beautiful rest of your week, and I will talk to you soon. Take care. Thank you for tuning in to today's show. A brand new episode drops each week. Be sure to click and subscribe. And remember, healing trauma, codependency, and your lifelong pattern in love does not happen by itself. You need expert guidance and evidence-based methods. And I have helped hundreds of incredible women from all over the country heal betrayal trauma and reclaim their confidence while falling wildly in love with their own lives and attracting healthy relationships. If you like what you heard today and you want to see if you're fit to work with us, go to BethanyDotson.com/talk. That's BethanyDotson.com/talk, and book a call to speak with us today. We'll get on the phone for about 45 minutes and get you crystal clear on 3 things. The real reason you keep attracting dysfunctional relationships, even if you know better or even if you've done tons of work on yourself. What you really want in a relationship, how you want to feel emotionally every single day in your life, and what lifestyle changes you want to make. And then number 3, the exact strategy you need to be using to get there. Again, healing trust issues, codependency, and a lifelong pattern does not happen without expert guidance. We've helped hundreds of women across the country heal complex trauma, codependency, and have the healthiest relationships ever, both with themselves and with others. Go to BethanyDotson.com/talk to book your call today. I'll see you on the next episode.